Powers. Powers, powers, powers.
Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, could the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix be moved from spring to autumn? It's something that the UCI are seriously considering if David Lappartillon's recent comments are anything to go by. I'll also update you on the closure of GCN Plus and the GCN App on December the 19th. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that the Ineos Grenadiers are looking for a new team principal. They confirmed to GCN last week that Rod Ellingworth has handed his resignation in, and it will mark an end of an era within that team. Ellingworth has, barring a short stint at Bahrain Victorious, been with the team since its inception. You can read more about that story over at globalcyclingnetwork.com. We also learned that Team DSM, who became Team DSM Firmenich in July, will be known as Team DSM Firmenich Post-NL next year. A catchy name, I think we can all agree. Sarcasm aside though, great to have another new sponsor entering the sport. This was the kit that they revealed last week, although given the general reaction to that jersey, many people will be pleased to hear that it's not the official team jersey for 2024. That will be revealed later on, although I personally don't mind that one. And finally, we learnt that UCI President David Lappartillon will be up for moving the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix from their traditional spring slots on the calendar to October. In an interview with Direct Velo, Lappartillon pointed to 2021, where the pandemic meant that the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix were postponed to October. Although he seems to have had a little bit of a brain fart there, because Flanders was in its normal April slot and only Roubaix was postponed. I mean, I loved the October Roubaix in 2021, partly because we hadn't had an edition for 2.5 years, partly because we had the first women's edition of the race, which made a full weekend of it, but also because it meant we had something really big to look forward to right at the very end of the season. It also arrived hot on the heels of a very successful and entertaining World Championships that took place in the Flanders region late in September. Add Lombardy into the mix, and it meant that we had an awful lot to look forward to late in 2021. Now that was in stark contrast to this year when the so-called Super Worlds took place in August ahead of La Vuelta. That meant that once the Vuelta finished, the Tour of Lombardy a few weeks later was the only really big race left on the men's calendar. So from that point of view, maybe a reshuffling of the calendar might be a good idea. It's only really set out in the way it is because that's the way it's always been. Avid race fans like you and I have got used to the calendar as it is, and a lot of us balk at the prospect of somebody messing with it. But that's not to say that it can't be improved. For example, it wasn't that long ago that the Vuelta was in April, the first Grand Tour of each season. And I think most people would agree that it is better to have the Grand Tours spread out. Firstly, it gives us a chance for a bit of a break between watching them. And for the riders, it means that it's possible to ride all three, as Sepp Kuss did so successfully this year. Now, I think one of the problems with Lappartillon's suggestion is that it's Lappartillon's suggestion, and that it comes hot off the heels of that quite frankly ridiculous notion that riders shouldn't be able to race the World Cyclocross Championships if they haven't done all the rounds of the World Cup leading up to them. I know Joe covered this on last week's Racing News Show, but what a bonkers comment. I mean, do you really want to prevent the likes of Van der Poel, Pidcock, Van Empel, Van Aert and Pieterse from racing the World Championships? So, remove the decision maker from your thoughts when you answer these next questions. Question 1. Would you be in favour of moving the Cobbled Classics to the autumn to allow the cycling season to finish with a big bang, and where the weather might be more akin to what we historically associate with the Spring Classics? Let me know in the comment section down below. And I'd also love to hear what the UCI road calendar would look like if you designed it from scratch. Just before I move on, one more thing to think about when it comes to Flanders and Roubaix. What would happen to all the other Cobbled Classics in the spring? What makes E3 so important and so great to watch is that it's a mini Tour of Flanders. Same riders, same roads, 9 days before the big race. It's like a dress rehearsal that we get to watch. Same really goes for Dwars-door-Vlaanderen to a degree, whilst Ghent-Wevelgem is a massive race in its own right, but maybe not massive enough to be a big draw if it wasn't part of a cobbled campaign. A lot of the reason that those races work is because they work together as part of a cohesive unit. Would they work if you split them up? Or would you move all of them to the autumn? The more you think about it, the more you realise how complicated a road racing calendar reshuffle would be. Now, the other big news in the cycling world last week was our own sad news. That GCN Plus and the GCN App will be consigned to the history books as of December the 19th, 2023. Last week's public announcement was one that I found personally very difficult to do. Something that I've been very passionate about GCN Plus and something that a lot of people have worked very hard to make a success. What I never expected was the scale of the reaction to the news and the level of emotion. It's the first time that I've ever felt unable to read through all the messages and comments that were being posted about a topic. And I don't mean that because I found it emotionally too hard to read, but that the sheer volume of them made it virtually impossible. Thousands and thousands of you posted to Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, and a little ironically, our own GCN app that will soon cease to exist. It's always really difficult to know exactly how something you're working on is perceived externally. People that like a product don't often say to, there's no real need to, but if something goes wrong with it, they will quite rightly complain. We had some glitches with the app over the years, particularly from the outset. Many of those got ironed out by a very devoted tech team, but other new ones would then surface. So to read the incredibly positive general sentiment towards GCN Plus and the app last week genuinely brought a tear to my eye. And it filled me with pride for what we achieved in a very short space of time. But maybe it shouldn't have been such a surprise to me. It is, after all, a product created by cycling fanatics for cycling fanatics. We love the sport, we know you do too, and so we put our hearts and souls into making a product that we'd love to use, even if we weren't involved with it. So thank you so much for all of your kind comments. I think for all of us here, it means the world. Whilst it's an incredibly sad situation, it has at least meant that we are now fully aware of just how much you all appreciated it. Now, there were also a lot of questions from you on where you'll be able to watch your bike racing from December the 19th onwards. Well, in Europe, it will be reasonably simple for you. Depending on where you are, you can either subscribe to Discovery Plus, Eurosport Extra or the Eurosport app. For those of you here in the UK, if you're already a subscriber to Sky Sport or, like me, BT, you may well be able to get Discovery Plus as part of your package. That was certainly the case for me. Costs vary from country to country and depending on what package you opt for, so you'll have to look into that yourselves to find the most cost-effective solution. Outside of Europe, well, that's where a lot of you are worried about how you're going to watch live racing in 2024. Currently, there is no legitimate way to access the racing that Warner Bros. Discovery have rights to. However, they say that they are working with local partners to ensure cycling fans can continue to access live racing coverage, and they will keep customers fully informed about future availability of the live content that's currently on GCN+. I know that the unknown is frustrating, but I'm absolutely sure that they're working very hard to find a solution for all of you. So what next for this GCN Racing YouTube channel? Well, it's a bit too early to know exactly, but what I can tell you is that there are no plans to shelve the GCN Racing News show, so I'll be here with you most Mondays for the foreseeable future. Beyond that though, I will keep you updated. On to cyclocross now, and there were contrasting conditions at the two major cross races at the weekend. The track at the Super Prestige in Merckxplas was not only technical, but the heavy conditions meant that it wasn't a case of not making mistakes, but limiting the ones that you did make. Lucinda Brandt, still in the early phases of her comeback from injury, got off to a great start, but when she was caught and passed by a flying sailing Alvarado on the second lap, a couple of back-to-back errors stopped her from being able to stay with her fellow Dutch woman. Alvarado held on to her advantage and won by 25 seconds ahead of Brandt, with Marianne Norbert Ribeiro riding a strong second half of the race to round out the podium in third. The men's race saw Joris Nieuwenhuis of Trek Balois Lions put in a dominant display to register his first elite victory at the age of 27. Nieuwenhuis is reaping the rewards of fully committing to cyclocross, having run it alongside a road programme with Sunweb and latterly Team DSM in the past, before signing with Trek Balois Lions in the autumn of 2022. In Merckxplas, he rode a measured race, not really attacking, but simply riding everybody off his wheel and keeping big slips to a minimum. Alpecin de Koninck's Niels van der Putte had stuck with the Dutchman for the opening couple of laps, but faded as the race went on. Conversely, Elisabeth ripped through the field, passing Felipe Oort and van der Putte to claim second place, while Nieuwenhuis has halted Elisabeth's 100% streak at the Super Prestige Series this season. Elisabeth, though, is still comfortably leading the series by 20 points ahead of Lauren Sweek. The following day in Troyes, Elisabeth was once again on the back foot. Van der Haar found himself off the front with a decent-sized gap, but as he admitted in his post-race interview, that meant he wasn't able to learn the best lines from other riders. When Isabet caught him, his lines caught Van der Haar off guard and a gap soon opened up. A gap that was never closed. Isabet cruised to his first UCI World Cup victory of the season and with that propelled himself to the top of the overall standings. A single point in front of Van der Haar, who has said that he will not be travelling to Ireland for the next round. Now, I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, but the men's cyclocross has been incredibly open this season and it's been great to watch. The 4 rounds of the UCI World Cup have now been won by 4 different riders. Nace, Van der Haar, Ronhaar and now Isabet. Whilst the European Championships were won by Van Turenhout, of course. Doesn't really get much more open than that. On the women's side, it's been a little less open so far. When Fen van Empel has been racing, she's won. When she hasn't, Alvarado has won. That was the case yesterday in the World Cup again, despite the return of Puk Pieterse. The Dutch champion looked to have the measure of her compatriot, particularly when a couple of slips from Alvarado saw her lose a chunk of time. However, not only did she get back on terms with her teammate, she then accelerated away from her to take her second World Cup win of the season. In the absence of Van Empel, that leaves Alvarado in a commanding overall position in the World Cup standings. Later on in the season, though, it's going to be great because Van Empel is going to return, Van Anrooy is going to return, Pieterse and Brown are going to get back on top form. There are going to be some epic battles in the women's races. Time now for me to let you know what's coming up for you on GCN Plus this week. Yes, we are still currently going. Just the 2 races for you this Saturday and Sunday. So on Saturday, it's the X2O Trophy from Kortrijk, otherwise known as the Urban Cross. For those of you who haven't seen that one before, it's like cyclocross meets criterium racing, so frantic and very fast, which makes some very close racing. Coverage of the women's race begins at 12:40 GMT, so that's 13:40 CET, and the men's race comes soon after that, and it's available to watch for all but our Belgian-based subscribers. Then on Sunday, it's the 5th round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup from Dublin. Now, I know a fair few people watching this will be heading there to see the action live, but for those of you looking to watch it from home, the women's race will start at 12:30 GMT, the men's at 1400, and it's available to subscribers in Europe, except for those based in Denmark, Norway, Italy or Belgium. Meanwhile, our documentary this week goes behind the scenes with Canyon SRAM at the Giro d'Italia Donne this year. With Chloe Dygert's return to form in the early season, there were high expectations. Here's a sneak peek.
The Giro, it was always looked at as the biggest race, most important race.
When it levels out, we go.
Chloe Dygert now comes through towards the front.
We bring a really strong team into this.
Because winning to me is not enough. I need to really win.
Guess one day it's you're on cloud 9.
Yes! It looks like we've had a crash at the back here. Who's gone down?
It's really bad.
It is a roller coaster.
How can she be dropped?
That documentary will be out for all subscribers to watch from tomorrow. I know a fair few of you are binge watching the documentaries at the moment before the app shuts down on the 19th of December, and a lot of you have been asking what will happen to them after that point. Well, the honest answer is we don't yet know. I'm pretty confident they won't be lost into the ether completely. That would be a massive waste, but we will keep you updated as and when we find out any more news on that front. On to other news now, and there will be no Mont Ventoux Challenge in 2024, unfortunately. The reason being that the Olympic torch will be heading through the Vaucluse department at the same time as the race was planned to be on, which is the 19th of June, and that will take up precious resources. They have vowed to return in 2025 for the 6th edition of the race, though. Team Cofidis have signed 2 more riders to their women's squad. Hannah Ludwig moves over from Uno X, while Sarah Roy heads there after 2 years with Canyon SRAM, whilst Matteo Fabro will leave Bora Hansgrohe at the end of the season and move to the newly named Polti Cometa. Right, that is all for this week, but I'll be back with you in 7 days' time, so I'll see you then.